We saw a deer standing still, but its shadow moved independently. At first I thought the moon was playing tricks. The canopy above us was thick. Old-growth branches knotted so tightly they broke the light into shards. Silver patches drifted across the forest floor whenever the wind shifted, and shadows bent in ways that never felt quite right. It was easy to blame the woods for anything. But the deer didn't move, not even when we stopped breathing. Evan stood beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat from his arm through my jacket. The cold out here had weight to it, settling into the spaces between ribs, creeping under fabric. Every inhale burned faintly. "Do you see it?" I whispered. "Yeah," he said. "Don't go closer." The deer stood in a pale clearing, its body rigid, head angled as if listening behind us. Its sides rose and fell slowly. Steam curled from its nostrils. The shadow did something else. It stretched sideways across the moss, too long, too thin. The legs bent wrong, joints folding where they shouldn't. The head lagged behind the body's angle, then corrected itself a moment too late, like it was deciding how to match. The forest around us held its breath. No insects, no distant calls, just the occasional creak of wood shifting somewhere deep in the trees, and the soft drag of wind high above. Even our footsteps had disappeared, swallowed by the damp ground. The shadow twitched. It didn't follow the deer, it watched us. I felt it the way you feel someone staring. A pressure behind the eyes, a tightening in the back of the neck. "Back up," Evan said. We stepped away together, slow and careful. The moss underfoot darkened where we stood, as if the light couldn't quite reach us anymore. I glanced down and saw our shadows stretching longer than they should, drawn thin toward the clearing. The deer blinked once. The shadow peeled. That's the only word for it. The darkness loosened from the animal's feet, lifting slightly from the ground, its edges blurring before snapping into a sharper outline. Taller now, narrower. Wrong. A faint cracking sound echoed somewhere to our right. We both turned. Nothing. Just trunks packed close together, bark slick and black in the dim light. Then, after a delay, the same crack came again. Too clear. Too exact. Evan's hand tightened on my sleeve. "It's repeating." Behind us, the connection between deer and shadow thinned to a thread. Flickered once, twice, and broke. The deer stood untouched in the moonlight, no darkness beneath it at all. The ground there looked pale, empty, as if shadow had been erased from that space. The thing that had been its shadow slipped between the trees. It didn't move across the ground. It appeared where darkness already pooled, stretching from one patch to the next without crossing the light between. Each time it settled, the surrounding forest shifted subtly, branches angling, needles whispering though the wind had stilled. "It's not attached anymore," I said. Evan didn't answer. The air thickened. Breathing felt shallow, like the forest was pressing back against our lungs. I looked down. My shadow moved, a fraction late. I raised my hand. It followed, but slower, the fingers longer, bending at an extra joint before snapping into place. "Evan," I said. "I know." We stood frozen, watching our own outlines hesitate, drift, then correct themselves. The darkness around our feet deepened, spreading into the moss like ink soaking through paper. From somewhere ahead, a voice came. "Evan." My voice. I hadn't spoken. Evan flinched. "Don't respond." The thing moved again, faster now. Its shape stretched and refined, limbs forming, a head tilting at an unnatural angle. It wasn't copying the deer anymore. It was copying us. Our shadows elongated toward it, drawn tight as wires. When I shifted my stance, mine resisted, lagging behind before sliding into place. The voice came again, closer. My voice, but thinner, flattened. "Evan." The forest answered with silence so complete it rang in my ears. "It's choosing," Evan whispered. "Choosing what?" But I already knew. The thing stopped at the edge of the clearing. It stood upright now, a human silhouette carved from absence, edges too sharp to be natural. It faced us without features, but I felt its attention settle like weight. Then it stepped forward. Not through the trees. through the shadows. It moved along the ground's darkness, sliding from one shape to the next. Each step pulled at ours, stretching them further, thinning them until they trembled. "Run," Evan said. We ran. Branches scraped against us, underbrush clawing at our legs. The forest closed in immediately, paths vanishing behind us as if they'd never been there. Our breathing sounded wrong, too loud, then echoed back a beat too late. Something followed, not crashing, gliding. Our footsteps repeated behind us, slightly off, learning the rhythm. I looked down as I ran. My shadow stumbled. I didn't. It twisted for a heartbeat, folding in on itself before snapping back into place and continuing. A test. Ahead, the trees broke into a small clearing. Moonlight flooded it, sharp and white, throwing our shadows long and clear. Too clear. At the far ends of them, something waited. The darkness there thickened, rising slightly from the ground, shaping into that same thin figure. It had moved ahead without passing us. It hadn't needed to. Our shadows stretched toward it, connecting. "It doesn't want the deer," Evan said, breath ragged. "No," I said. "It wants what moves." The figure tilted its head. Our shadows lifted, just a little, enough to feel the pull. Not physical, something deeper, like being separated from your own outline, your own proof of being there. Evan's hand slipped from mine. I looked at him. His shadow stayed stretched toward the thing while he stood a step away from it. For a moment they were separate. Then his shadow stepped forward. He didn't. "Wait," he said, confused, looking down. The darkness around his feet climbed, wrapping, merging. The figure's outline sharpened, taking on his proportions, his height. Learning him, I reached for him, but my own shadow jerked in response, tugged tighter toward the figure. I stopped. I don't remember deciding. I just stopped. Evan looked at me, something like understanding flickering across his face. "Don't," he said. Then his shadow pulled fully free. The forest swallowed the sound that followed. I ran. I didn't look back. The woods thinned eventually. Sound returned first, wind, insects, the small living noises of a normal place. Then the trees spaced out, and finally I stumbled onto a narrow road under a low, pale moon. Alone. I told myself he'd made it out another way. I told myself a lot of things. Under a streetlight hours later, I checked. My shadow matched perfectly. Every movement, exact. No delay. No distortion. For days, nothing changed. Until tonight. I was in my apartment, one lamp on, the rest in shadow. I stood to get water and saw it, just at the edge of vision. A hesitation. I stopped. So did my shadow. A second passed. Then it took one more step than I did. Just one. It slid back into place immediately, perfectly aligned again. And from somewhere far away, deep, layered, like sound traveling through miles of trees, I heard it. My voice, soft, practicing, trying out a different name. Something tapped on our shoulders, but nothing was behind us. It happened at the same time. Evan flinched first. Sharp inhale, shoulders jerking. Then I felt it, a light, deliberate touch between my shoulder blades. Not a brush from a branch, not falling debris. Precise tap. 2 points of contact like fingers. We turned together. There was nothing there. Just the forest, dense, ancient, and impossibly still. The trunks rose thick and dark around us, bark slick with moisture. Their branches woven into a ceiling that let only thin ribbons of moonlight slip through. The ground was soft with moss, swallowing the sound of our shifting feet. "You felt that?" I asked. Evan nodded slowly. "Yeah." We waited. The silence pressed in, heavy and complete. No insects, no wind at ground level. Only a faint movement far above, where the canopy stirred just enough to send fractured light drifting across the forest floor. Then something cracked in the distance. A single branch snapping clean. We both turned toward it instinctively. Nothing moved. Probably just, I started. Tap. Again. Same place. Same pressure. 2 distinct points against my back. I spun around faster this time, heart climbing into my throat. Empty. Evan's eyes were wide. It did it again. To you, he nodded. Same spot. We stood back to back after that without saying it out loud, as if instinct had already decided what logic hadn't caught up to yet. My breath fogged faintly in the cold air. The temperature had dropped without warning, settling into my bones in a way that felt intentional. Another crack echoed through the trees. Then, after a pause too long to be natural, the same crack repeated. Identical. Evan exhaled slowly. That's not an echo. No, I said. It wasn't distant enough or distorted enough. It was exact, like something had heard the sound and chosen to repeat it. Tap. Both of us flinched. This time it lingered, not just a tap pressure, as if something rested its fingers there, testing the shape of our shoulders, the space between muscle and bone. I reached back blindly. Nothing, but the cold deepened where I touched, like I disturbed something that wasn't meant to be felt. We need to move, Evan said. Which way? He hesitated. We'd been careful coming in, marking trees, keeping a general bearing. But now the forest didn't look the same. The spaces between trunks felt tighter, the angles wrong. Moonlight fell in different places than it should have, as if the woods had shifted while we weren't looking. We'll just pick a direction, he said finally. We started walking. The moss dampened our steps completely. Even the rustle of our clothes sounded muted, swallowed before it could carry. The deeper we moved, the more the silence thickened, until it felt like something we were pushing through rather than existing inside. Tap. I stopped. Evan stopped with me. This time it came from the side, not behind. My right shoulder. I turned slowly. Nothing. But the shadows there seemed darker than they should have been, pooled in the folds of roots and low brush. They didn't match the angle of the moonlight above. They leaned slightly like they were arranged instead of cast. It's moving, Evan whispered. It's not there, I said. Yeah, he said. That's the problem. We kept walking. The tapping came at irregular intervals, sometimes minutes apart, sometimes seconds. Always precise, always deliberate, never random. And it began to change. At first it was just 2 points, like fingertips, then 3, then a full hand. Not weight, not exactly, but the suggestion of it. A shape pressed lightly into the fabric of my jacket, mapping the curve of my shoulder, the line of my spine. It was learning. The forest reacted. Branches angled subtly toward us as we passed, their silhouettes bending against the light in ways that didn't match the wind. The narrow beams of moonlight shifted too slowly, lagging behind movement as if delayed. Once, I stepped forward and my shadow didn't follow right away. Caught up a moment later. Evan noticed. You saw that? Yeah. Don't look at them too long. Why? He didn't answer. Tap. This time it came with something else. A sound. Soft. Close to my ear. My own breathing. I froze. Evan turned. What? It copied me, I said. As if in response, the sound came again, but from his side this time. His breathing, a half-second out of sync. We stood there, listening to ourselves echoed back at us, slightly wrong. Then Evan spoke. Hello. The forest swallowed it. Silence. And then, hello. His voice, repeated, flattened, careful, too precise. Don't talk, I said quickly. Tap. Harder this time. Push almost. I stumbled forward a step. Evan grabbed my arm, steadying me, but his attention snapped past me immediately. What? I said. Your shoulder, he said. I turned my head just enough to see. There was nothing there, but the fabric had indented, as if fingers were still resting on it. I shrugged violently. The impression vanished. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the forest shifted again. The path ahead, if it had ever been a path, seemed to bend slightly, trees angling inward to narrow the way. The light dimmed without fading, as though something stood between it and us. It's guiding us, Evan said. No, I said, my voice unsteady. It's testing. Another branch snapped in the distance. Then again. Closer. Then again. Closer still. Not moving through the forest. Repeating forward. Tap. My left shoulder this time. Then my right. Then both at once. Pattern. Like it was mapping symmetry. I clamped my arms against my sides. Stop, I whispered, though I didn't know who I was speaking to. Evan's breathing quickened. It's choosing. The words landed heavy. Choosing what? But I already knew. The tapping slowed. More deliberate now. Focused. It stayed on me longer than before, pressing lightly, adjusting, as if comparing something unseen. Evan stood untouched beside me, his shoulders rising and falling too fast. Why did it stop with me? He said. I didn't answer. Because it hadn't. He just hadn't felt it yet. Tap. He gasped, jerking forward. No! Stay still, I said. We stood there, rigid, as the invisible contact moved between us, alternating, comparing. The forest held its breath around us. Even the distant cracks had stopped. Everything was waiting. The tapping became synchronized. Left, right, between us, matching. Then it stopped. For a long moment, nothing happened. The silence deepened until it rang. Then something shifted behind my eyes. Not a sound, not a touch, but a thought that wasn't mine. A sense of position, of distance, of where Evan stood without looking. I knew it too clearly, like I was touching him without moving. I stepped back instinctively. He did too, at the exact same time. We stared at each other. I didn't mean to, he said. Me neither. The forest creaked softly, like something settling into place. Tap. But this time it wasn't on my shoulder. It was inside the motion. My arm jerked slightly. Not enough to be obvious, but enough. Did you just... Evan started. I didn't, I said. The next movement was clearer. My hand twitched at my side, fingers curling halfway before stopping. Evan's eyes widened. It's not just touching. No, it was learning how to move. The tapping came again. Faint now, almost unnecessary. Each contact was lighter, shorter, as if it no longer needed to press as hard to understand. Our reflections in each other had become enough. Run, Evan said. We did. Branches scraped past us, the forest closing in tighter than before. The ground dipped and rose unpredictably, but we didn't stop. Behind us, no footsteps followed, only the memory of them, repeating, slightly delayed. By the time we broke free of the trees, the night air felt different, looser, thinner, real. We didn't stop running until we hit the road. Under the open sky, the moon looked steady again. The silence lifted, replaced by distant insects and the hum of something far away that sounded like the world returning. We didn't speak for a long time. Eventually, Evan laughed. Too sharp, too forced. We're out. Yeah, I said, but I kept my arms stiff at my sides the whole way home. That was 3 days ago. I haven't felt it since. Not exactly. But tonight, standing in my kitchen, I reached for a glass on the counter. And my hand moved before I told it to. Just slightly, just enough to notice. I froze, waited. Nothing else happened. Slowly, carefully, I lowered my arm. Behind me, in the quiet of the apartment, something tapped my shoulder. Light, familiar, perfectly placed. And a moment later, from somewhere just behind my thoughts, I felt the answer. Not a voice, not a sound. Just the certainty of it. It had learned enough to stop touching. Now it could reach without it.